All right, let's talk about something that most of us deal with every single day, coffee. We're going to dive into the science of how it really works so you can actually use it to your advantage to get that energy boost without wrecking your night's sleep. First up, let's look at a cycle that might be a little too familiar. Does this feel like your life sometimes? You wake up, you're exhausted. So what do? You grab a coffee to power through the day. But then when you finally get to bed, your mind is racing, you're tossing and turning, you feel completely wired. It's this super frustrating loop to be stuck in. And this slide, well, it lays out that vicious cycle perfectly. You're tired, so you drink coffee, which leads to poor sleep, and then you wake up, you guessed it, even more tired than before. But here's the thing. What if the problem isn't the coffee itself, but how, and more importantly, when you're drinking it? To get that, we need to look at what's actually going on inside your brain. So let's get into the science. First, we have to understand how caffeine pulls off its amazing trick of making us feel so alert. It all comes down to a really clever chemical disguise that fools our brain.
Okay, so let me introduce you to the main character in this story. A chemical called adenosine. The easiest way to think about it is as your brain's natural sleepiness counter. Seriously, from the moment you wake up, adenosine starts building up, creating what scientists call sleep pressure. The longer you're awake, the more you have, and the sleepier you feel. Simple, right?
Now this is where caffeine's disguise comes into play. On a molecular level, caffeine looks a whole lot like adenosine. So when you have that cup of coffee, the caffeine rushes up to your brain and basically parks in all the spots that were reserved for adenosine. It's an imposter. It blocks the real adenosine from docking, which means your brain never gets the "hey, I'm getting tired" signal. And that's why you feel so awake.
But, and this is a huge but, there's a catch. While caffeine is busy blocking all those receptors, adenosine doesn't just disappear. Oh no. It keeps building up in the background, like water piling up behind a dam. So when the caffeine finally starts to wear off, that dam breaks. All of that built-up sleepiness comes flooding into your brain all at once. And that is the dreaded caffeine crash.
But wait, there's more. Blocking that feeling of sleepiness is only half the story. It turns out caffeine has another kind of secret power. It can actually mess with your internal body clock. Let's dig into how that works. So, your body runs on this amazing 24-hour master clock called the circadian rhythm. It's the boss that tells you when to feel awake during the day and when to get sleepy at night. And it's mostly controlled by things like light exposure and hormones, especially melatonin. You can think of that as the hormone of darkness.
Well, it turns out that caffeine, especially when you drink it later in the day, can actually delay your entire circadian clock. It basically tricks your body into thinking it's earlier in the day than it really is, and it does that by pushing back the release of melatonin. This creates what you could call social jet lag, where your internal clock is totally out of sync with the actual time. And this brings us to one of the biggest myths about coffee and sleep. A lot of us think that if we can fall asleep after a late coffee, then it didn't really affect us. But that is just not the whole picture. There's a hidden cost that you don't feel until the next day.
I mean, we've all heard this, right? Maybe you even said it yourself. And look, you might be able to fall asleep just fine. But here's the key. Falling asleep is not the same thing as getting good restorative sleep. That caffeine is still in your system, and it's quietly robbing you of the good stuff.
And here's the evidence. This is what's happening under the surface. Studies show that caffeine absolutely tanks the amount of slow-wave sleep you get. That's the deepest, most physically restorative stage of sleep you have. It's when your body repairs muscle, consolidates memories, and cleans out metabolic junk from your brain. So even if you get 8 hours in bed, you can wake up feeling groggy because you missed out on that crucial deep sleep phase.
So how in the world do we avoid this? It all comes down to timing. And to understand timing, we have to talk about one really critical concept, the half-life of caffeine. So, the half-life is just the time it takes your body to process and get rid of 50% of a substance. And for caffeine, the average half-life is a shockingly long 5 to 7 hours. Let that sink in for a second. That's just to get rid of half of it.
Let's just walk through a real-world example. Say you have a 200 milligram coffee at 4 p.m. Okay, by 9 p.m., when you're probably starting to wind down, you still got about 100 milligrams of caffeine active in your system. That's like drinking a small cup of coffee right before bed. And even at 2 in the morning, a quarter of that caffeine, 50 milligrams, is likely still circulating, messing with your sleep quality.
Okay, so now that we get the science, how do we actually fix this? The good news is you don't have to quit coffee. You just need a much smarter strategy. So let's get right into it. Here is your strategic plan with 6 science-backed rules to get you the best of both worlds.
Okay, rule number 1. Try waiting about 90 minutes after you wake up before you have that first coffee. Let your body's natural cortisol do its thing first. Number 2, obey the 10-hour cutoff rule. Figure out when you go to bed and count back 10 hours. That's your caffeine deadline. 3, hydrate before you caffeinate. Always have a big glass of water first. 4, know your genetics. Some people are slow metabolizers of caffeine, and if that's you, your cutoff has to be even earlier. 5, try a strategic nappuccino for that afternoon slump. Drink a coffee, then take a quick 20-minute nap. And finally, number 6, get sunlight in your eyes first thing in the morning. This is huge for anchoring your body clock for the entire day.
You see the pattern here with all of these rules, right? The crucial point is this. It's all about aligning your caffeine intake with your body's natural biological rhythms, not constantly fighting against them. Caffeine is an incredible tool, and when you get the timing right, you unlock all its benefits without any of the major downsides.
So I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. When you use caffeine the wrong way, are you really just borrowing energy from tomorrow to survive today? By mastering your timing, you can actually break that cycle and start maximizing the energy you have every single day for good.